Alright, in the last video we basically went through and created our elevations from our wall section, typical wall section, and then we went through and we added our finishes. Added our asphalt shingles, we added our siding, doors, windows. We also added a sand hatch that represents our parging. Below grade, we're going to show our foundation and footing. So the next step to this process is to annotate these, and we're actually going to go through and start creating notes that call out these different items. So the first thing I need to do is go to my Annotate tab, and under here we're going to look at our textile, and we're going to make sure it's still on our annotative Romans SHX 1/8 inch text. Everything looks good. That's our current, and we're going to go through and look at our multi-liters. And if I look at options, actually I'm going to go through and look at our multi-liter style. So I have to click this little down arrow, and whenever I look at this, again, everything should be set up how we set it up earlier. We have our liter format, liter structure, and the content. Everything looks good. And the last thing that we need to do is make sure that we're on the correct layer. So we're going to use our A-text layer. So I'm going to set that current. And then I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to start adding notes. Before I do that, I'm going to move these away from my floor plan a little bit. Separate these a little bit. And I'll just come in here and start with this. So on my Annotate tab, I click on multi-liter, and I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to call this asphalt shingles. So again, I'm going to use capital letters for this. Put my caps lock on, asphalt shingles. If I wanted to, I could go through and I could pick out the actual style, color to be used, the actual manufacturer. We're just going to leave a pretty generic note on here. Right here, this is my fascia. So this is how the end of the trusses are going to terminate. So basically, if we go back to our wall section and we look at this, we're going to have a fascia board on the end of those, which is going to be a 2x4, but we want to cover this with metal so that we don't have to paint it or worry about how that's going to look. Down here, I'm going to point at this, and I'm going to call this 4-inch aluminum fascia. So I added that text in. Now I'll come down here and call out my siding. This is going to be Dutch lap vinyl siding. I can point at my parge, and I'm going to call this 1/8 inch thick cement parge. And I actually want to stretch this up, so I can just grab on that grip, move this up a little bit so that I can add some text here. And this is going to be my finished grade. So I'll just call it finished grade. And I also went through and I added continuous footing CMU foundation. And if I wanted to just clean this up a little bit, I could stretch these in a little bit so that everything's kind of lining up. And now I don't need to call these out in any other location. If I wanted to, I could grab this and I could bring it down here and just stretch that out a little bit. And I can basically go through and I can change the location and the look of these multi-leaders. I'll move this one down. And I'm actually going to stretch that up like that. Just bring this up a little bit. So that I can point underneath here and call this my vented soffit. At this point I have everything annotated except for these doors, so I can come up here and I can just grab these symbols that I made, copy them down, and I'm just going to drop them right there. So now I have my door symbols on here as well, and I'll do the same thing with the door and the window in the other view. I'm going to grab these, bring them down here, rotate them, and move them into place. So right now I don't have anything drawn for this window or this door, basically just the opening. So at this point I would go through and draw some more detail for this window. So the next step is to draw a double hung window. So we're simply just going to zoom in here, and I'll just move this out of the way temporarily. So for this window, I'm going to draw the frame first. So I'm just going to offset 2 inches the whole way around. To show the frame of the window, and make sure this is on the correct layer. Whenever I click on this, it's on the parge layer, so I definitely need to change that. So I'm going to highlight everything, go to my home screen, and I'm going to look for something with the window. A-window frame, and I'll actually set that as my current layer also. And the next step is to draw a line at that midpoint to that perpendicular, and then I'm going to offset again. Offset 2 inches. And what I just drew there is the bottom sash of the window. And the top sash is actually going to be behind the bottom sash, so I can offset again 2 inches. And I don't know what the actual sash thickness would be. It might be thinner than 2 inches, but this looks good on the drawing. And then the last one, instead of filleting these, I'm going to trim those out to give the appearance that this sash falls behind the bottom sash. And that's basically all that I would need to do to draw a double hung window. Well, if I wanted to, I could also draw a grill in. So to draw the grill in, first thing I would do is I'd see if I have a layer to make that on. Doesn't look like I do. So I'm going to -LA, enter, make a-win-grill. Color, I'm going to make this color 241, which is a very, very thin line. Then I'm going to use my divide command again, and I'm going to divide this into 3 different parts. I'm going to select that and type in 3 items, and it gives me these just like before. And then I'm going to divide this into 2, and then I'm just going to simply draw the line from my node. And we still have node set as one of the O-snaps, and if you don't, that got changed somehow, you can come in here and you can choose node so that you can draw those lines. And you could also do, if your points aren't actually showing up whenever you do that divide command, you can come up here to this Utilities tab and you can change your point style by clicking on point style, doing the pull down and then choosing point style. So I'm going to draw a line from that node, and I like to use perpendicular. And then I can go ahead and erase those nodes or those points. And if I wanted to, I could just leave it like this. That's a pretty good representation of grills. Very low detail. Or if I really wanted to show a lot of detail, I could offset each of these something like 0.375, which is going to give me 3/4 inch thick grills. So I'm just going to show you how I would do that for those purposes. I think I might have got this line twice or this line twice. And once I have those drawn, I can just come in here and erase the middle ones. And then trim all and just clean this up. And there I have grills. And I basically do the same thing with this one. I don't need to separate that into 2 points there. And I can just copy these down there. I'm going to offset, same distance, up, down, erase that, trim these out. Use my extend command, extend to all by hitting enter, and then choose these to extend. And now I have grills the whole way throughout. And then I can just grab this and come back up here and put it in there. My problem becomes this is awful close to those things. It's going to not look as good, but I could probably scale this circle down. I'm just going to do scale. I'm going to grab the circle. I'm going to leave the text the same, and I'm going to shift right click, and I'm going to pick my insert point, and I'm just going to stretch it, or scale it down by I, turn my O snap off by hitting F3. I'm going to make it about that big. Okay, so once I have the door done, or the window done, I can move on to the door. And what I need to do in here is basically just draw this, the door handle, and then draw, this is supposed to be a one light door, So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my layers. Again, this is on the A parge layer, so I'm going to choose these. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to look for A-door-frame or something like that. So A-door-frame, it's right there. I'm going to offset this in 2 inches the whole way around, and this is really going to represent my brick mold. Whenever I do this, I actually want to have my brick mold go outward from the door, and then I would have a door frame on the inside. So instead of offsetting that in 2 inches, I'm going to offset it out 2 inches. And if there's nothing at the bottom, just be around these 3 sides. And then I would need to redo my hatch. I'm just going to move it down here. I'm going to hatch. Just going to hit enter, and I'm going to use my match properties to match it up, and then erase this one. And the next step would be to show the door frame. So I'm just going to do 1 inch offset the whole way around on the inside. Clean that up. Looks good. And now I can draw my window in here. And I basically want to have a window that matches something like this. So I'm going to see if I can basically just copy this and then stretch it, play around with it a little bit. So I'm just going to copy all this using a crossing window and then shifting and selecting to remove the siding. Do that again, crossing window, shift, select, enter, and bring it down here. We'll do the same thing with my door. Bring it down here. And erase these lines. And trim these lines. And I'm going to get rid of these ones. Then I'm going to go through and figure out where my window is. I could just as easily draw this in here and do it both ways. So I want at least 2 inches in between where my window is and where the door is. So I'm going to offset in 2 inches. I'm going to draw a line for my midpoint, toggle my O-snaps back on, and I basically want my window to be that size. Maybe offset it in 2 more inches. And again, we're just making it look good. It doesn't have to be the actual size of the light in the door. So at this point, if I wanted to use this one, I would copy this out here. I'd move it from the midpoint to the midpoint and then move previous, turn my ortho on, and at this point I could draw a line up there, draw a line up there, and I could stretch these in. That would be my crossing window. Stretch it to the perpendicular, and I'm going to stretch it to perpendicular, and now all of a sudden these things don't work anymore. So at this point I would have to, and they're not going to work in this direction either, so I'm going to copy this over here also, and I'm going to line it up with this, move previous, and I will draw my lines, move this out of the way, draw my line down here. This one's already lined up, and then I can stretch this that way. So at this point I think I want to find where my division points would be, so I'm going to use my divide command, and I'm going to divide that line into 3, and I'm going to divide that line into 3. And at this point I'm going to use my stretch and my copy command, and basically I'm going to come in here, I'm going to draw a line across there so that I can use the midpoint. I'm going to draw a line out there, and then I'm going to erase that little line. So at this point I can stretch this, being careful not to include this node in my stretch. And I'm going to stretch it from that intersection to the node so that everything's lined up there. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to copy this time. And I'm going to copy those lines with a crossing window, or with a selection window instead of a crossing window. And I'm going to copy from node to node. And I can just trim all, clean those up, and then I'm going to do the same thing in this direction. So I'm going to draw a line across here, draw a line from the midpoint, draw a line across here, draw a line from the midpoint up, and I'm going to erase that and erase that. I'm going to stretch all of this from that intersect to that node, and I can delete those two things. I forgot the bottom ones, so I'll redo that. So after I undo that, I'm just going to zoom out, and this time I'm going to stretch all of these. From that point to that point. You can erase that and that. And I'm going to do the same thing here. From that intersect to that node, delete that, delete that, delete these, and there I have my window drawn. So I'm just going to draw a line from that bottom corner over here as a reference point. I'll delete that, and I'll move this into its place. Then I'm just going to randomly draw a circle with a 2-inch diameter to represent the door handle. And I'll go ahead and I'm just going to leave this, put it on the door frame layer. Not too worried about it. And then just so that everything's lined up, I'm going to move that from the quadrant to the midpoint, move previous, turn my ortho on, and move it down. Get rid of these. And then I need to basically erase all of this and put this in its place. So again, I'm going to draw a line from the outside edge of that brick mold I'm going to erase all of this with the blue window that completely encompasses. And then I'm going to move this from that corresponding point to the end point of that, delete that reference line, and everything's good to go. At this point, I don't have to go through and annotate everything that's on here that's duplicated there, but there is one thing that's missing on this that we need to add. I need to show the roof slope in both these directions. So we had drawn something before. I think we ended up erasing it. So basically I'll just do this. I'll redraw that, and I'm going to put it on my text layer, and I'm going to offset. Actually, I'm just going to copy. We'll even do it simpler. We'll just come over here, turn my ortho on. I'll draw a line up 5 over 12. Leave that right there. I'm going to find a piece of text to use. I'm just going to grab this, bring it over. I'm going to explode this, erase that, and then I can use this. I'll just change this and explode it one more time. And I'm going to change that to 5. And whenever I do this, this slope symbol seems really small, so I'm going to scale it. I'm going to use my scale command, and I'm going to scale it up by 2, make it twice the size. We still have the exact same slope because we scaled up both things equally. And I'm just going to move that there. I'm going to copy it up here, and I'm going to change this to 12. And now I have 5/12 slope shown there. And I'm just going to copy it over here, and I'm going to mirror. Erase previous and move it into place. And now I have the slope shown in both places. So those two elevations would be done, and the elevation for the back and this side would be exactly the same as these, except for without the doors. I could do those real easily if I wanted to, just by basically copying these and then deleting the windows and the doors. For this project, I think we're just going to go ahead and leave this with 2 elevations that show everything that we need to show. The only other thing that I would need to add with this is a lot of times building inspectors want to know the total overall height of the building. So I could add that in either one of these drawings. So I would go through and look at my dimensions, click on that, and I'm going to change this to the A-dim layer, or dims, and I'm going to choose that and that point, and I'll extend it out here, and now I have an overall dimension from the ground height to there. If I wanted to, I could also DIM enter continuous, and I could continue that, and I could show my foundation depth and my footing depth. And those 2 elevations would be complete. So save the drawing, and I'm going to move this out of the way. Possibly use this as a building section. Delete those lines. And in the next drawing, we're ready to start making our typical wall section from this drawing.